Here at the Giver Marketing Network, we don't leave you drifting out in space. We connect you to a coach who will help you build and grow your marketing business. Our process acts as a guide on how to connect with other businesses, maintain good relations, and establish a presence on the Giver Marketing Network. Each member within this collaborative group will have the opportunity to leverage your talent and influence, a true network effect. If you are looking to collaborate on more projects, welcome to the Giver Marketing Network, the most trusted and highest rated collective of specialists on the planet. Here we have a group of like-minded professionals who focus on making valuable introductions and helping each other grow by teaming up. Imagine Upwork meets a network and a coach. The talent collectively includes services like visibility and SEO, creating logos, designing websites, managing social media, outreach messaging, visual storytelling, and much more. Think of what you could do with laser-focused allies strengthening your business while offering your talents to the entire network. Click near this video for more information.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching from, whether you're watching us live or the recording, the replay. We want to encourage you to buckle up, pay attention, because whether you're a part of Kingdom Warriors University, Giver Marketing Network, or if you're watching us live on one of our channels and you're like, who are these people? What are they talking about? Well, we're going to be diving into let me just ask a question, Christine. You and I have been talking about this. Joel, you and I have discussed this quite a bit. What's the deal with all the streaming videos? Like, what's happening with, is everybody in broadcasting now? Or like, how does that work? Why is it important? How can that benefit me, us and everybody that I'm involved with? Like, how does that work? So we're going to be talking about the power of broadcasting. So here we go. We're going to jump into some questions later. So get ready to put those in the comments. But before we begin, Christine, you and I have been broadcasting, doing some things together for a while now. Can you share a little bit of kind of your story and how you got into the space, the marketing space, the communication space? What's the background? Who are we talking with here? Like,
how much time you got, Timothy? When it comes to marketing, my background's communications. I taught college, loved it, took some time off to raise my kids, went back and said, do I want to do education? Landed into this space and couldn't ask for a better use of my communications degree. And broadcasting specifically, during the pandemic, I had a client that was saying, hey, my studio shut down. He's not going to broadcast anymore. He's like, I've had this show for years and years. I don't want to lose my fan club. I said, all right, well, let's figure it out and let's do it. And we just learned by trial and error and fire, jumped in and made it happen. Now I've been doing it for years. And broadcasting is so much fun.
Right. It used to be you had to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment and the right rooms and buildings and team members and all sorts of folks to put on a big production. And now we have a little bit more at our fingertips. So Joel, I'd love to hear from you, kind of your background, where you came from, what you're learning, just a little bit about your focus in the marketing space. Then we can jump into what we're all learning in a few minutes.
Sure, Tim. So I came out of the incentive industry and working with corporate marketing teams about working on positive behavior that influences the company's direction. So whether it was improving attendance or reducing costs, it was about how does that affect and drop directly to the bottom line. And what I've really learned over those years was that how people behave really affects the growth trajectory of a business. And so behavior and positive actions and creativity and input, all of those things matter. And I think this is where broadcasting has kind of stepped in and said, look, we're in a digital world. Now we can crowdsource this amazing superpower of creativity and mind space and knowledge. and put it out there in a way that people can consume it easily and at great numbers.
I love it. I love it. And it's just good to be in the room with professionals who know what they're doing. And speaking of broadcasting, I'm going to kind of bring something up on the stage here. Shameless plug. We love our network. We love the Giver Marketing Network. We want to make sure folks that are able to attend our yearly summit can go to givermarketing.com/summit and jump into our group, and they will have access to a live broadcast on January 9th. It's the second Tuesday of every year. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're watching a replay, second Tuesday of every year, we want to see you here at our all-day summit where over a dozen professionals will be talking about marketing and how to improve your communication, creativity elements of your marketing and take you to another level. So just wanted to mention that here briefly as we get started. But hey, let's jump in to the power of broadcasting and just have a discussion. Let's have a kind of a relaxed discussion style as we rock and roll today. Does that sound good?
I love it.
All right. So the power of broadcasting brought to you by Joel, Christine, and Timothy. And we also have one of our amazing network members, Kurt Von Onen, as well here to talk about the power of broadcasting. Kurt, do you want to share a little bit of your background story really quickly before we jump into our visuals today?
Super quick. Background in automotive and power sports, transitioned into an authorship and running my own WordPress-based agency. And now I help other companies with membership and learning websites and business consulting.
Love it. Yeah, I love the leadership and the public speaking and the way that you communicate. So this will be a fun conversation today. All right, let's jump into it. The power of broadcasting. We got a couple of notes here, kind of conversation points that's going to jump up on the screen. We want comments, questions, snide remarks, interesting resources, everything you can give us in the comments, ladies and gentlemen, because this is going to get fun. Here we go. All right. So how does it enhance your branding, visibility, promotion, and nurturing? We often talk about branding, visibility, promotion, and nurturing in that order as kind of a track or a blueprint for you to go down and check off like, okay, my branding's pretty dialed in. My visibility is getting pretty good as well. People can find me. Promotion. I'm getting the word out. I'm not the best kept secret in town or in the industry anymore. And I am following up. I'm nurturing folks. Joel speaks to that quite a bit. We all do to some degree, but Joel has kind of a superpower in that area. And so there's these pieces here that really most marketing professionals or organizations really should pay attention to at least these four basic pillars of their marketing activities, right? So let's jump in. All right, so branding. Lady and gentlemen, and all those listening and interacting today, what does broadcasting do for our brand when it comes to awareness? Like just bringing the general awareness factor to the table. Like, okay, I don't know how many folks are like listening or watching these or know that I even exist. How does a broadcast just help with general awareness? I know a lot of folks think of awareness like putting a billboard up, like just general awareness as you're driving by, or other online activities as well. But what does a broadcast do for awareness? Can you give some insights? Any kind of thoughts on that?
Well, I think the biggest thing with awareness is, it's not a given that you have an audience. So when you put up a website or you start your social media, if you start looking at your analytics, you'll realize that it's not going very far. You could have 1,000 people that are followers and maybe 20 of them will actually see anything that you post. So when you talk about awareness, the idea now is how can you build your the awareness of your company by sitting on the shoulders of people that have gone ahead of you, other broadcasters, other podcasters, other people that you can network with that will relate to your vision and want to share your story.
Okay, you're talking about alignment with others to get an audience there, kind of get some awareness going beyond your typical default mode, if you will. Okay, I love that. Love that.
I'm going to follow that up with, I just read an article, I think it was yesterday, about that, Joel, and they were talking about how 50% of people will find you by watching someone else's show that you were on. Right. So they saw you over there and they're like, oh, I like this person. I'm going to follow them also. Right. So exactly what you're saying.
Case study, or case in point, one of the mentors in the PR industry that promotes SaaS companies specifically actually promoted a brand company and was their spokesperson. And so by being their spokesperson and promoting their product, they were able to build their own audience. And then it's now launched into, a worldwide influencer. So it's an interesting process when you think about where you can get the most numbers. Your network is very important.
Kurt, I know you have some experience with some pretty heavy lifting brands. Can you speak to kind of that brand connection or authority that comes with being associated from an awareness standpoint?
The brand thing is huge, and kind of echoing off of what Joel had said. I mean, his words of wisdom are absolutely on the mark there, but there's also that point. I always tell people this is a long game. This isn't an easy thing. There's no easy button for this. And so you have to get into a branding and awareness situation, understanding it's the long game, right? And then you might start to have followership that you don't even know about. And that's the weirdest thing when that starts to happen. But affiliating with larger brands can speed that up. For instance, I'm a WordPress expert, but I'm also very closely affiliated with Lifter LMS, which has a much bigger audience than I do. And so just by the nature of affiliation, I bring that audience partially to myself. So it's important to also have personal branding that's in alignment with the larger brand.
Well said. Personal branding, alignment with the larger brand. Write that down, ladies and gentlemen, that alignment piece, which Joel alluded to, Christine mentioned, and Kurt also mentioned. When 2 or 3 people start mentioning the same thing, write it down in the comments, because it's going to benefit all of us, especially for those who are going to watch the replay and then go through and take notes with you. So let's take some notes together in the comments and do that. Okay. All right, good. So we talked a little bit about just general awareness. Like, let's not, let's have an audience. Okay. Let's start, with a little bit of that, and then making sure that your credibility is enhanced by what you're doing and associating with others who have a brand authority or some kind of alignment that you want to be connected with, so that as you rock and roll together, there's a synergy. It all makes sense. Have you ever watched one of those broadcasts where like you're listening to the interviewer on a podcast or something, and the person on the other end is like totally off brand? Like it just doesn't make sense. You're like, why is so-and-so interviewing so-and-so? Like there's no alignment. They're having trouble interacting with questions. Like there's no reference point. There's no connecting point. Make sure and jump into groups, networks, podcasts, affiliate scenarios that just make sense to your brand. And this is one of the things we always like to mention to our clients as we're working together. We like to play together at Giver Marketing Network. We work on projects together, and we all kind of beat the same drum. Like, look, if you're in this space and you have a superpower and your brand is about this, don't go over here and start promoting like 15 other things to confuse your audience. When you're broadcasting, talk about your thing, like your superpower. But we always talk about branding, visibility, promotion, nurturing around here. Some aspects of marketing, communication, creativity. Speaking of creativity, I'm going to do a little product drop here, right here. Little love for Robert Redden. Produced the images that are on these slides today. I just want to give credit where credit is due. He used some modern tools to do that, and I know we also have someone that is just jumping into the broadcast right now, Ken Cook. Christine, if you want to bring him in and just even now as we jump into the second part of our discussion. Ken, it's good to see you. And anybody with a cowboy hat can join anytime they want. Like I'm totally in. I lived in Austin, Texas for a minute, and I miss it. I just miss it. And so thank you, Ken, for bringing the A game today. Appreciate you. All right. And later, maybe you can share a little bit of your story. We're talking about branding, visibility, promotion, nurturing in a relation to broadcasting, right? So the multi-channel concept. Okay. This was not really available to the average Joe and Mary, 20 years ago. It wasn't readily available. So let's talk about multi-channel. Some people call it omni-channel. Some people call it like just get on the channels, like any channel you can. Like what do we need to know about just general visibility so people can see us on multiple channels? What do we need to know about this, ladies and gentlemen?
Well, I think one of the biggest considerations is what kind of budget you have for expanding your footprint, right? If you're going to go on multiple channels, it's probably going to cost you some money. So, you need to kind of plan ahead for this. The long game, as Kurt alluded to, is such an important mindset. Anyone in a survival mode, this is not going to save your business. This will grow your business, but if you're in survival mode, it's not going to save you. Take your money, go buy your groceries, and find another way. Because this is all about building an audience and how you either accumulate it organically or buy it. So, both of those relate to the speed of growth.
Love that. Ladies and gentlemen, be hungry but not desperate. So Joel was just alluding to this idea that we can't save our business by just being on a few more channels or a few more places. It can definitely help for the long term is what I heard, but we always want to be hungry, try new things, but let's not be desperate and think that it's going like there's a smoking gun out there. That's in the movies. That's great. Things do happen that seem miraculous at times, and we pray for those things. It's like we often talk about. There's some things you pay for and some things you pray for. Okay, so like there's all sorts of different ways that you can find success and trying different things. But goodness gracious, okay, I love the tips there. Anybody else have any thoughts about multi-channel approach? Should we stay on one channel and dominate one? Should we go to as many as we can and then evaluate the data? Like what do we do when we're broadcasting? Like right now we're broadcasting to what? 8 channels or something right now, Christine? Like, how do we evaluate what to start with and what to do?
Well, and you got to think about where your audience is, right? What does it make sense to broadcast to? Is that where they're hanging out? And some of the newer platforms you think about, there might be a little bit smaller, but then you're big fish, small pool, right? So you have a little bit more visibility. And then there's the larger standard ones that you're used to, and that'll stream for a lot of the locations, right?
A lot of it comes down to what is your content generation strategy, right? So are you a long form content communicator? Are you a graphically oriented communicator? Are you comfortable with video and the cadence of speech that keeps people, engaged in what you're saying? And so I think when you can identify your type of content generation that you're most comfortable with, that's where you find your home channel, this omni-channel idea is a great idea, but you need to have like a home channel that becomes your cornerstone, your foundational rock, if you will. At least this is my viewpoint. And then as you begin to get these strongholds in those foundational areas, then you say, okay, well, now I'm going to try and repurpose some of this content or expand on some of this content and start to bring in these other channels. Now, at some point, because Joel mentioned survival mode. If you're in survival mode, go make sales. Don't waste your time and money on this just yet. But if you're past survival mode, then you have to start thinking about how do you process this? How do you put this to a process where you might be able to pass this or delegate this to somebody where you begin to then focus on your core skill that helped you grow in the first place. So the omni-channel approach is very unique, but I think that a lot of people jump in too quickly and try to be everything to everybody, which blows what we just started talking about with the personal branding. Focus on your core strength, then expand as you can, that kind of land and expand mentality. right? And then think about how do you process it and possibly delegate some of it. And I think that's a real key to success and growth.
I would agree with you completely, Kurt. You know, we tell people all the time, you're not Bud Light. Okay.
Thank goodness.
And here's the thing. I don't know if you all know, Bud Light has an annual marketing budget in just the United States of about $150 million. That's roughly 50 cents for every man, woman, and child in this country. Okay. They have the budget to be able to invest, as Joel said, in going really wide. But I talk to a lot of small business owners who, when I ask them, well, what is your budget per person? What do you think you can get away with spending per person? Because I hear all the time, well, I can work with anybody or I can work with everybody. Great. Doesn't matter. I don't care who you can work with. I care who you can afford to position in front of. And so, given that you're not Bud Light, you have finite resources. What's the largest audience you can functionally afford, and what will that money buy you? Right? Because there could be a serious reality where, you know what, I need to be in front of a very expensive audience, and I can only buy a small chunk of it. Right? Or I've got a really cheap audience, and I can buy a lot more. I think either of those are fine, but it ultimately comes down to, I think, as Joel said, it's a budgetary reality where you have to know, what can I spend to be in front of this audience, and how long can I afford to do that in order to drive additional revenue.
Okay. All right. So there is an element of experimentation, but at some point you got to start making data-driven decisions based on budget, based on numbers, based on audience, based on all these pieces. Ken, thank you for mentioning that as we kind of rock and roll here with what about rebroadcasting and shorts and some of these pieces. I'd like actually Ken to mention some things about rebroadcasting and shorts, because I've been seeing some of his work with the Prepared Group and some of his, personal brand kind of getting out there and some different things. So if you could speak to rebroadcast, kind of get us started on that part of just being visible so people can see us on the reel, no pun intended.
Yeah. I think the first thing is you have to have a really effective means by which you're creating content at volume. So we spent a fair amount of time with our staff videographer to figure out how can I in one day produce 4 to 6 weeks worth of content. And so we actually have in our business a film day where we knock off work for a Friday and we sit down and we film that entire day.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, film day. That's definitely something to put in the comments. A film, film hour, a film half day, a film day, some kind of dedicated time. Keep going, Ken. What do you got?
We've done this with a lot of clients over the years, and it removes the biggest hurdle to actually to creating, especially video or audio driven content, which is how do I find the time to do a little bit every single day? You don't. You do it in a big chunk. Okay. Secondly, once you have that, editing goes a long way, because I can answer a question in 2 minutes, and that can be 2 1-minute videos if I do it well. It might be 3 30-second videos because there's going to be context that's important and that I can use. And so from 1 2-minute answer, I may be able to grab 6 videos, ones that are shorter, some that are mid-length, and then the full-length version. And so recognize that, especially when it comes to this video medium, your video editor is probably the most important person in the process, because they're the ones who are actually going to drive the volume of content.
I like it. So even if we change the video, like the video format as we're live right now, and let's say Christine has some thoughts to share on just rebroadcasting and reels and shorts and these kind of things, we can take this same video right here that we're streaming right now, slice and dice it, get it ready for other channels, make sure that we get little clips and little talking points from her, and that enhances her brand depending on how she shows up on a screen, you can do different editing pieces. Okay. All right. Christine, any thoughts since you're highlighted right now on the screen?
I was trying to figure out how I ended up highlighted.
Yeah, we're just playing around. We're just making sure people get their spotlight, their highlight, because we do want to repurpose these videos. Like next week when we do the summit, or the second Tuesday of every year when we do the summit, we have multiple speakers. We have 4 or 5 of us here today, but we're gonna have a dozen or more. What can we do with those videos? Hint, hint, hint. Like, let's repurpose them. As long as the quality is good enough to kind of use those editing tools, then we should be good. And maybe somebody can speak to the quality that's needed in order to do that. Christine, do you have any thoughts? And then we can kind of rock and roll.
I am thinking about the visibility side of it and how the more you show up, the more you show up. So if you're doing more broadcasting and someone goes to search for you on Google, because I'm doing a training right now with Sharon Miller, #1 Google trainer. And so she's talked about how, when we search your name on Google or your company, how far does it go before someone else pops up, right? You want to be, that's going to really do a lot for building the credibility of your brand. When someone goes and looks you up and there's all pages, right, of you, that's pretty awesome.
Well, that brings up the beautiful elephant in the room, which is YouTube, right? So if you can stream to YouTube, you immediately play nice with their cousin, Google, who bought them out a while back. So we got a search engine optimization kind of built into these streaming moments. It seems like more and more every day. Somebody was going to mention something about the quality of the video before you can slice and dice it. Can somebody bring that up?
I am not a really good source for that, Tim, because there are a lot of cases where I'll throw quality right out the window depending on situational content. Like, some of my most viewed videos are literally, I call it curbs with Kurt. I just grab the phone, go for a walk around the block, talk to the camera. And for some reason, people love those videos. And then I'll do some really in-depth, great, deep content with a good camera and great audio, and 10 people watch it, And so I think part of the key with video marketing and broadcasting as a whole is you have to understand some things are going to grab, some things aren't. Again, I keep mentioning long, it's the long game. You have to be willing to put stuff out. And then to Joel's point, look at those analytics and say, okay, what things did hit, what things didn't hit. For instance, I thought the curbs thing was a stupid idea until I looked at the analytics and said, wait a minute, I got 10 times as many people watching these. I need to go walk around the block more often.
Let's quickly discuss this, because there's a difference between organic with a nice smartphone and garbled and unable to see what's going on and cropped unprofessional. Like, it just is, something's off. Like, it's not cropped right. Like, there's a difference between organic and unprofessional. Like, how can we decide what's worth trying and what's not? Can we get some other thoughts on that? That's really good conversation point, Kurt. Thank you.
I think the biggest thing in this is people will always forgive video problems, right? So if you've got a shaky camera, if you've got a little bit of, out of focusness, etc., as you're doing something in more real time, that's really forgivable. Okay. That's kind of to a degree what we expect. And we're even seeing more of this in like production movies and TV shows where you get these kind of shaky camera effects, etc., right? To kind of bring you into the moment. So all of that, I think, as a small business, just be okay with. What you should never be okay with is poor audio. If your audio is wind cracked, if your audio is hard to understand or garbled, etc., you got to fix that, because people will not forgive bad audio. And so,
good point. Okay, I'll take that.
For me is kind of the biggest thing is all of the analytics for years has shown if you've got video that's poor quality, it's grainy, it's older, right? Like I don't know about y'all, I sometimes watch videos recorded in the 70s and 80s, right? Especially like academic stuff. There's some great stuff still out there.
Classic.
the video quality from the 80s is really poor, right? But the audio in general sounds pretty good, and I can deal with that. And so you don't need to be shooting in 4K HD necessarily, so long as your audio quality is really crisp and sharp. And so I would say, above anything else, invest in a really, really, really good microphone. That's going to make a
Good
big
tip.
difference.
Ladies and gentlemen, pop that in the comments. I got to get me a microphone. Invest in a microphone. And when we talk about investing, we're not talking about $1,000 microphone. We're talking about $100, $200, a couple $100. Depending on who you are, it could be a little bit less. Like it doesn't have to be crazy, right? I'm trying to give a range here, Ken, because this could be watched 10 years from now, and it just doesn't have to be, like a certain price point. It just needs to be kind of above the bait. It needs to be higher quality than the lowest price microphone you can find. Like it needs to be double that, like just double that, and you're probably good.
I'll be really honest.
We're talking about evergreen content, Ken.
So here's the thing: when you look at good mics, there are different mics for different purposes. Okay, so outdoor microphones, there's some really good ones out there. I've seen them in the $20 to $40 range, where you can buy like a lapel style mic that'll plug into your phone for $20 to $40, and you can walk around outside, and it's got a nice little windscreen on it, and it'll do a decent job. Right? There are interior mics, like for inside, where it's going to do a lot of noise canceling work. That might be $75 to $100, right? Your standard Blue Yeti is about $100. That's a great little starter microphone.
There you go. You just dropped Blue Yeti, ladies and gentlemen. I've heard that multiple places. Well said. We're talking about also cutting up the video. We can talk about this a little bit later too, but I do want to mention a couple of tools since we're dropping some resources like this. Who's using what? Like, what tools are we using to slice and dice and kind of edit these videos with some of the modern tool, software out there? What do you guys got that you've actually tried? Not that you've heard of, that you've actually tried.
We use a tool called Descript quite a bit for our e-learning process.
Okay.
It helps us with removing the ums and the ahs and those blank spaces. And what's really unique about this particular tool is it creates a transcript of the video, right? And then it's timed with your actual video. And then using AI, when you delete certain words or change certain words, it kind of like morphs and melds the video together. It kind of does that splice and stuff. And so if you're watching the finished result, sometimes you can see that transition or that splice. But from an e-learning perspective, that's, to Ken's point, people forgive the video more than they do the audio, right? So this is focused on making the audio as crisp and clean as possible. Okay. And then the video is changed to correspond with great audio. They also have a feature called Studio Voice. And so when you listen to me on my microphone, I might sound like you're listening to smooth jazz. But when you say that on Descript, it changes it so I really sound like the dude from the radio. Like it really cleans up your voice.
Oh,
and so that's a really, really good tool.
Descript. Okay, that's good. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, as you're watching this broadcast, notice how we're enunciating. Notice how we're using our hands. Notice how we're speaking with our body language. Notice everything, because we learn just as much by watching people as we do listening to them. So continue on. I just wanted to mention that as Kurt was dropping his resource.
Yeah, I put the link in the comments for anyone that wants to share that.
Also, Tim, I want to mention that if you're going to edit or you're creating evergreen content, how you set up the initial recording is going to affect the editing process. So if you're just trying to edit a stream of consciousness conversation similar to what we're doing here today, which is very impromptu in its topic and answers, it's going to be a more difficult editing process than if you had scripted the topics and the responses. And it doesn't have to be word for word, but it definitely outlined and creating timestamps where your editor can go in and and create those snippets that are now, beginning, middles, and ends contained, right, from the content.
I like that. A little bit of planning can help that editing process tremendously. Okay, great point. Who else? Anybody else on the kind of the editing tools or suggestions or tips?
I'm going to add in on Descript that I've used it to save audio and video that I thought I was going to have to throw out. There's been times you might have a little background feedback on audio or something, and I've actually put it through there, and it's like magically cleaned it up and taken that extra little echo out. And I thought for sure that was going to have to be re-recorded, and it was amazing. So before you throw it away, throw it through Descript.
Wow, I love this. I always wonder how these specialists are able to do their thing, like the tools of choice and all these things. I had somebody mention video vidyo.ai, and then another person mentioned opus.ai, opus.ai. I know there's probably benefits to one over the other and that kind of thing, but those are just some modern tools that you can play with to get used to what we're going to be doing in the new era of artificial intelligence and technologies that are going to help us. And video.ai and opus.ai seem to be coming up a bit more these days. Any other tools, tips as we move on?
I want to kind of give a plug for some of the old dogs in the room, right? The Adobe Suite, for example, where you've got Premiere Pro and you've got After Effects, right? And then you also have their audio editing tool in there, which the name I can't think of.
Audition.
Thank you. There's some of these tools like the Adobe Suite that are the industry standard for a freaking reason. And what they are going to enable you to do once you know how to use them is mind-boggling. And for anyone who thinks, oh, well, that's just so complicated, I can't figure it out. My 14-year-old son took a LinkedIn learning course on Premiere Pro and was editing and launching YouTube videos within a week. And I would just say the information as to how you can use some of these really good tools is readily available through platforms like LinkedIn Learning, YouTube, etc., and so forth. And they are what the professionals use for a reason.
Well said. So that industry standard tool, like suite of tools, should be considered as you're not only learning but experimenting, and then those will set the stage for other play toys that we can leverage in the marketing space. Okay. All right. I love it. All right. So let's jump in to the next micro topic here today and then land the plane here in just a second. What about the almighty call to action when it comes to broadcasting? What do we give away? Whiff them and whiffed. What's in it for me? What's in it for them? What do we need to consider when it comes to broadcasting and actually promoting your thing, like your offer or your next step or whatever? What's the call to action? What's the classy way to do this, ladies and gentlemen, in today's modern era?
Oof. I do a lot with the webinar format, Timothy, and with the webinar format, completion is the goal, right? You want people to hear the whole message, not check out after 3 or 5 minutes. And so typically we will say in a classy way, hey, thanks for coming to this webinar. Please know that if you've taken the time to come, we do have a special gift available for you at the end of this broadcast, and it's just a simple offer, right? And maybe it's a free digital planner, maybe it's access to a free course or a free lesson or a free, I'm primarily in the e-learning space. So there's usually some kind of value add that gives people a sample of our product. And then of course, when they sign up for that sample, they're going to get, that almost the abandoned cart experience of, hey, I hope you liked your free course. Would you consider becoming an actual member, right? So we're looking for that that vertical for revenue. But yeah, it's for us. The classy way to do that is, hey, thanks for coming. There is something here for you at the end if you choose to stay to the end.
Love it. Great point. Who else?
I think it's an important to consider what the next step is. So how do you move someone from an open discussion to becoming a client? So does that mean you need to have an initial meeting? Does that mean they need to try your product on a 7-day free trial? What is the next step that brings them closer to you? And then by selling that as your offer, that micro step that takes them from your open discussion as a audience person, someone viewing content, how do you take them to engage with you? So what's that next step of engagement? Because once you've brought them into that, now you're in the nurturing process and the ability to deliver real value-based content to them. So when you've gone through the effort of creating a value-based webinar or a value-based discussion or a podcast that's really delivering, important content, now what's the next step? How do we entice them to start engaging with you? And I think that's the key to your offer.
Well said. Anything else around the gift, the offer, the next step, planning, or resources or tools that you recommend including? If nothing else, remember, XYZ. Like what are some baseline tips for those who are just getting into broadcasting or taking their broadcasting to another level from your perspective?
The only other thing I would stress is the desired outcome. Right? What is it you're trying to get out of this? Because it could also be a filter, right? If you just want to build your Instagram following, do a giveaway, and then you'll get, a bunch of people that'll sign up, and boom, you've got, a much larger base. It's a common practice in the influencer world, right? But if you want to use it as a filter, I only want to talk to people who have a budget and are serious about taking action. And I think, Timothy, you shared a presentation on that level last week where the speaker, tells you right up front, this is going to be a commitment from you in order to engage with us, right? And so you can use that call to action as a filter as much as you can a spontaneous reaction to just generate an audience. And Ken does a great job, him and his partner, with free gifts and giveaways and ways to pre-qualify people and see what their interest levels are. And I've really enjoyed watching their broadcasts.
David and Ken at the Prepared Group, ladies and gentlemen. And speaking of that, I want to mention that there is a classy way to drop a call to action in the middle of an organic flow, like we just did just now, right? So Joel's talking not only about case studies and different things earlier, but also he mentioned another piece of content that we're dropping in the middle of an organic conversation. There's intentionality to that, but there's also an organic flow to it. So, like in a movie when somebody's driving a certain car and they pan the car with the video, or you're, somebody's drinking a cup of something and it has a logo on it or a this on it, or maybe a book's hanging out in the background, or like it's classy product drop is what it is. And so if you think of it like you're a up and coming, think of it like a movie production almost. Like, hey, how do I weave this in naturally as we're talking? Like I mentioned the word summit a couple times in this broadcast, but I didn't do it in a weird hey guys, let's I didn't do it like a traditional commercial. Try to get untraditional with your commercials is what I'm saying. Any other thoughts around that before we move on?
We've done this thing with our broadcasts where we have a good number of them that intentionally have no call to action. In fact, okay, if you were to get onto our short form channels, especially LinkedIn, I would say 1 in every 20 videos maybe has a call to action of any kind, in part because we recognize call to action decreases viewer loyalty.
Tell me more.
So I really want you to think about this. If you listen to a guy for a minute at a time, and 15 seconds of that minute are him telling you to take an action, in other words, it's not valuable to you. 15 seconds of that is introduction. It's not valuable to you. So of your minute, only half of it is actually valuable. What happens is your audience says, I don't know about that. Because they recognize intuitively, not necessarily consciously saying, oh, this isn't valuable, but they kind of say, yeah, I'm going to skip that. And so the more that you can do, I think, 2 things. 1, provide real value over and over and over throughout the entire process. And 2, have an unexpected ending.
Interesting.
Okay? So we did I had our videographer do this thing a while back where he looked at the top 50 Mr. Beast videos. Okay. And we looked at just the first 5 seconds.
For those who don't know Mr. Beast, just look up the word Mr. Beast and you'll be fine.
If you don't know, then I don't even know why we're talking about this. Right? He's the most successful guy at doing this, period, hard stop, end of discussion, right?
Yep.
And so he has a very particular set of hooks that really work for him. And when mimicked by others, work for them. But he also, and he said this in multiple interviews, he has a very particular way that he ends his content, which is abruptly. He doesn't have an exit thing. He doesn't have all of this other stuff. The content just ends.
Makes you wanting more.
And it does 2 things. 1, the platform rewards you for having people watch to the end. Well, guess what? How many of us want to watch your 15-second exit video? Your exit bumper. Who wants to watch exit bumpers? I don't want to watch an exit bumper. Y'all don't want to watch an exit bumper. Don't put it on there because no one cares. Same thing with your intro bumper, right? If you look at the statistics and you go onto a YouTube account or a Facebook account, etc., watch the number of people that drop off as a percentage with your bumper content. It's huge.
Very
Whereas
interesting.
At Mr. Beast content, just as an example, he's not the only one, but he's a great example. He jumps into his video instantly, right? So you might start a video. Today I'm giving away $500,000.
Which is what he does.
Right? And now you're hooked because you're saying, wait a second, I know exactly what's going on. I didn't need a 15-second Mr. Beast bumper. He gets right into it. And this is we actually have this document. If you want it, Tim, I'll send it to you. But it is really, really different than what the vast majority of small businesses do.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you want that document, reach out to Ken Cook. Find him on LinkedIn or other social channels. He's on Instagram, Facebook. I've seen him everywhere. So just reach out to him and ask him for that Mr. Beast tip document thing that he was talking about on the Giver broadcast, and we'll be good. Hey, Ken, I know you got a lot more when it comes. There's a lot more in that hat, if you know what I'm talking about. But anybody else have any thoughts on just classy ways, like to work with the algorithm, to work with the psychology of the viewer, like any classy ways that maybe myths, like Ken, you just kind of did some myth busting right there, right? So that was pretty good. Any other tips as we move on to the last topic?
Don't be afraid to rebroadcast it. Don't be afraid to post the replay. Don't be afraid of regurgitating content, because on a wholesale basis, only a small percentage of your circle, your network, your followers, however you phrase things, are actually seeing things when you post them. Okay. So don't be afraid to repost. Don't be afraid to repurpose content. And earlier your slide was, what's in it for me, what's in it for them kind of thing. Ken did a great job of saying, what's in it for them, provide the value. You don't have to advertise yourself or do call to actions and everything. But the what's in it for me thing is, go back to that long game comment and go, some of the things we said in this talk so far might have discouraged someone from going, man, I didn't know it was going to take this much work. I don't know if I want to do this or not. If you play the long game, it'll happen. I mean, I was at WordCamp this year and people walked up to me and said, hey, aren't you the Mañana No Mas guy? You know, and that's bizarre when that first happens. But now it's 6 months past that event and it's happened multiple times. And I've gotten multiple speaking gigs from people looking at my content.
Brand recognition, hey, get the reps in, ladies and gentlemen, because there ain't no professionals out there that don't get the reps in. You're not going to have high quality output if you don't get the reps in. Look at Myron.
Do the workout.
Look up Myron Golden. He's one of the most interesting communicators that I've come across recently, and has taken his video game to another level. Myron Golden. There's a few others. Mr. Beast is kind of a different kind of a different spin on that, but they're very successful. These folks, if you just watch their content, even Gary Vaynerchuk, just the way he builds a personal brand. Like, there's just different people that you can watch. Some of them are a little more clean than others. Myron Golden is golden when it comes to his content, for sure, on multiple levels. All right, so we talked a little bit about call to action. It's nice to pepper it in organically, but don't get heavy on pitching. Otherwise, you're going to end up taking your audience and literally pushing them away. If you're pitching the whole time, look, free or not, content, do not pitch so heavy that people are wondering what in the world they got themselves into. Like, just give value, mention a couple things, and then go and be really direct with what you're doing and bring a lot of awesomeness. Okay, last piece. Joel, we often talk about nurturing, following up, value adds, drip campaigns. How do we follow up with the folks that we're broadcasting to? Like, are there any tools? Like, what do we need to know about follow up and just adding value, kind of surprises like we were talking about earlier, some of those kind of things? How do we do this?
I think the biggest thing is to know what capabilities you have within your CRM system, because it's really important that people are getting information based on how they engaged and under what topics they've, is worth pushing them through or leading them through. So if you're doing a talk on a specific topic, in this case, broadcasting, and somebody engages with you, that should fall into the channel of information where you now deliver value-based content around their interest. And I think the biggest mistake most small businesses have is they just vomit on anyone that comes into their mailing system, right? They just, oh, by the way, here's newsletter level content, when all you did was ask for our latest free report. Right. So it's very important that that sequence of events happens based on how people are responding.
Audience segmentation, right? So make sure you've got it planned that that's exactly what they're interested in, and send them down that path. That's what they want.
And there's nothing wrong with asking them, like, hey, what are you guys most interested in? I'll say that right now. What are you most interested in as we go into some big broadcasts over the next few weeks? With the Giver Marketing Network and our marketing professionals. What do you want to hear about? Like, when it comes to communication, creativity, marketing of any kind, then this will help us make sure and get you what you need. And so any other thoughts around nurturing, following up with those who are popping comments in, following up with those who are signing up for your things, registering for your things? How do we best do that without annoying people? I think Joel gave some really great tips there. Thank you, Christine. Anything, Ken, you want to wrap us up with on that?
I would just say, as you're thinking about follow-up, you've got to ask the question, what is this person, what am I convincing this person of? What belief am I trying to implant in them? And therefore, what is the nature of my follow-up? I think there's a lot of people that what they do is they, for lack of a better term, they vomit content out on people that doesn't move them towards an actual sale, doesn't move them down the path. And so asking the question, what information does this person need to take the next action? This book behind me, Spin Selling, they use the term advance, right? What is the advance that I'm trying to get them to make? And so really thinking about that and saying, well, what's the next step? What do I want them to do? And therefore, what do I need to give them to help them do that?
And I will add to that in our conversation today, we talked about prior planning. What's the desired outcome? What is this next step? Well, how are you going to structure the content that you're broadcasting so you can create evergreen information out of it? So the same thing applies to sequencing. What is the next step is right, but have you scripted it out? Have you pre-written half a dozen emails that respond to that topic? Have you pre-created half a dozen posts and images, right? Have you already created your asset library to support this journey? And that's the biggest thing. We're working with clients now where they go, yeah, let's put this out. And I'm like, great, that's super. But what assets do we have to work with for follow-up, right? We have to create an asset library that supports it because time is of the essence. People's short attention span, you wait a week to respond to a comment, you can forget it and it's lost.
This kind of thing will help generate more referrals. It'll help bring more clarity as businesses and brands mature. We always like to say businesses are like babies. As they mature, different things happen. Like they end up growing and getting a little stronger, more confident in different things. So as we get more confident, let's remember what our panel has said today, ladies and gentlemen, that as we get more confident, we can get very clear on, look, if you're the right audience, we have a solution or some kind of, we can help you in some way, some kind of solution to your problem or pain. We can make sure and help elevate you and advance you toward a result that you're wanting anyway. So let's communicate in that way, ladies and gentlemen, in our broadcast. Let's stop being as timid and let's start being more confident in who we are as a brand. Let's develop together. Let's use communication to do that. And with that, I just want to encourage you that as we continue to play together and work on things together, we look forward to seeing you in future broadcasts. God bless you guys. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.
That's right. We'll see you